If you are over 60 and you wake up every morning with pain in your joints, your back, your knees, your hands, and your doctor has told you that this is simply part of getting older, I need you to stop and listen to me very carefully. Because what I'm about to share with you is something I wish someone had told me 20 years ago, before I spent a decade trying to solve this problem the wrong way. I am Dr. Sarah Miriam Levine. I am 68 years old. I was trained at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, Hadassah Medical School, and I have spent over 40 years practicing preventive medicine and longevity research, working with women in Israel, in New York, and here in Boca Raton, Florida, where I live now. I have sat with thousands of women over 60 who came to me after years of being told the same thing, that the pain they feel is expected, that it is manageable at best, and that the options are anti-inflammatory medications, physical therapy, and learning to live with it. And for the first 15 years of my career, I told some of those women the same thing, not because I didn't care, but because that was the extent of what I had been taught. Then at 45, my own body began to fall apart in ways that my medical training couldn't explain. I had chronic joint inflammation. I had fatigue so deep that no amount of sleep touched it. I had a brain that felt like it was wrapped in wet cotton. My own blood work was, as my doctor told me with a shrug, completely normal. And I sat in my office one evening, surrounded by the most advanced medical literature of the 20th century, and I felt completely lost. That was the night I opened my grandmother Rachel's notebooks. My grandmother Rachel Levine was born in Łódź, Poland in 1921. She survived things I will never speak about in detail. She never spoke about them herself. She came to Brooklyn with nothing except the knowledge she carried in her body and in her mind. She lived to 98 years old. She never took a single medication until she was past 90. And she moved through her life with a quality of ease, of physical vitality, of sharpness that I have never seen, matched by any patient I have ever treated with the most modern pharmaceutical interventions available. She left behind notebooks, handwritten in Yiddish and Hebrew, filled with practices, observations, remedies, prayers, and what I can only describe as a system, a complete architecture of how to maintain the human body across a lifetime. Today, I am sharing with you 4 specific habits drawn from that system, 4 practices that Jewish women have used for over 3,000 years to live without the kind of chronic pain that so many women today accept as inevitable. Toward the end of this teaching, I'll share something that my grandmother only revealed to women she truly trusted, a practice so simple that most people dismiss it immediately, and so powerful that I have watched it change lives in a matter of weeks. This is one of the teachings from the 7 Jewish laws of longevity, a system I have spent 40 years documenting, validating, and teaching. Today we will work through 4 habits that belong to 2 of those 7 laws. Each one is practical, each one is anchored in real science, and each one, I promise you, will change the way you understand what is possible for your body after 60. Before we go further, I want you to do something. I want you to type in the comments right now, "My body is not defeated." Just those 4 words. Because the first step in every one of the 7 laws is the declaration that what you have is not the end of the story. Type it now. I read every comment. I will see it. I grew up spending every Friday evening in my grandmother Rachel's kitchen in Brooklyn. The smell of that kitchen is one of the most powerful memories I carry. Chicken broth, simmering since Thursday, the sharp green of fresh dill, the particular golden color of the oil in the cast iron pan, Rachel moved in that kitchen with a deliberateness that I did not understand as a child. Every ingredient she used had a reason. Every practice had a name in a language older than any medical textbook I would later study. When I opened her notebooks as a 45-year-old doctor in crisis, what I found was not superstition, it was not folklore, it was a medical system, one that had been tested not in a randomized controlled trial over 18 months, but in real human lives over 30 generations of women who survived every imaginable hardship and still outlived their neighbors who had access to far more comfortable lives. I applied the practices in those notebooks for 90 days. At the end of those 90 days, my inflammation markers had dropped significantly. My energy had returned. The joint pain that had been my constant companion for 3 years was gone. Not managed, gone. That was not a coincidence, and it was not magic. It was the result of applying a coherent, complete system, the same system I am teaching you today, one law at a time. Now, let me tell you the truth about chronic pain after 60, because before I give you the solution, I need you to understand what is actually happening in your body and why the conventional approach to managing it keeps failing. According to the CDC, more than 1 in 3 adults over the age of 65 in the United States lives with chronic pain. Not occasional discomfort, chronic pain, pain that interrupts sleep, limits movement, reduces independence, and quietly erodes quality of life year after year. And the first thing most physicians reach for, understandably given what they were trained to do, is pharmacological intervention, NSAIDs, corticosteroids, eventually more serious medications. Here is what the research shows, and I am speaking to you now as a physician who has read this literature carefully. Long-term use of NSAIDs in women over 60 is associated with increased risk of gastrointestinal damage, cardiovascular events, and kidney decline. We are treating one problem and creating 3 more, and we are doing it because we have not been asking the right question. The right question is not, how do we suppress the pain signal? The right question is, why is the inflammatory response in this body so persistently dysregulated that it produces chronic pain as its default state? And the answer, in most cases, comes down to 4 factors: what we eat, how we rest, what we expose ourselves to, and whether we are living inside a community or in isolation. These are not new discoveries, they are ancient ones. The Talmud in Tractate Berachot addresses the relationship between the body's inner fire and its regulation through daily practice. Maimonides, the 12th century physician and rabbi who wrote his regimen of health for Sultan Saladin in 1198, described with extraordinary precision the relationship between food, rest, emotional state, and what we would today call systemic inflammation. He called the body a trust given to us by the divine. His prescription for health was not the removal of symptoms. It was the cultivation of conditions in which the body could do what it was designed to do. My grandmother Rachel never read Maimonides directly, but she lived his medicine, and the 4 habits I am about to teach you come directly from the intersection of her notebooks, Maimonides' writings, and the validated science of the 21st century. This is Law 3 and Law 5 of the 7 Jewish laws of longevity. These are 2 of the most foundational laws in the system. And today I am going to show you exactly how they work, what they require, and why they work so specifically for women over 60. The first habit is what my grandmother called eating with intention. This is rooted in the tradition of kashrut, the Jewish system of dietary laws that most people understand only as a religious ritual, but which contains within it a sophisticated metabolic protocol. The aspect of kashrut I want you to focus on today is not the separation of meat and dairy, though that has its own biological logic. I want you to focus on the concept of shmirat haguf, the obligation to guard the body. In the Jewish legal tradition, this is not a recommendation. It is a commandment. The body is not yours to damage. It is a gift held in sacred trust. And Shmirat Haguf means that every decision about what enters that body is a decision with moral weight. What this means practically is this. Name, my grandmother never ate processed oils. She never ate food she could not identify the origin of. She cooked with olive oil, with rendered chicken fat, schmaltz, with the fat that rose naturally to the top of the broth she had been simmering since the day before. She ate fermented foods every single day, pickled cucumbers, fermented beets, kefir when she could find it. She ate an enormous quantity of bitter vegetables. She ate fish twice a week. She ate very little sugar, and when she did eat sweet things, she ate them with fat, never alone. A 2022 study published in the journal Nature Aging identified that the single strongest dietary predictor of reduced systemic inflammation in women over 60 was the consistent presence of fermented foods in the daily diet. Not supplements, not extracts, but actual fermented foods consumed as part of the daily pattern. The Mediterranean diet, which broadly mirrors the traditional Ashkenazi Jewish diet of my grandmother's generation, has been consistently associated with lower levels of C-reactive protein, lower IL-6, and lower TNF-alpha, three of the primary inflammatory markers driving chronic pain. My grandmother had no idea what IL-6 was. She just knew that the body needed to be kept clean from the inside and that food was either medicine or it was slow damage. Habit 1. Every single day, eat at least one fermented food and one source of healthy fat, not a supplement. Actual food. Fermented pickles, kefir, real yogurt with full fat, a teaspoon of olive oil. This is not a diet. This is a practice of Shmirat Haguf, a daily act of guarding the body. The second habit is one that most women over 60 in pain have never considered as related to their pain at all. It is the quality and timing of sleep, but not in the way your doctor has discussed it with you. My grandmother had a practice she called preparing the body for the night. She did not simply go to bed. She prepared, and this preparation was part of her understanding of the Shabbat principle, the sacred law of rest, which is law 1 in the 7 Jewish laws of longevity. In the Jewish tradition, rest is not the absence of activity. Rest is a sacred state that must be entered consciously. The Shabbat does not begin by accident. It is called in with candles, with a specific blessing, with a physical transition that signals to the body and the soul that the mode of existence is changing. My grandmother carried this principle into her nightly rest. She never ate within 2 hours of sleep. She dimmed every light in the apartment at a specific time. She drank a particular preparation that I will describe in a moment. And she entered sleep as a deliberate act, not a collapse. Here is the science. The liver performs its most critical regenerative work, including the regulation of inflammatory cytokines, between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. If the body is still digesting food during this window, the liver is occupied with metabolism instead of repair. Chronic late eating is one of the most consistent and overlooked contributors to morning pain and joint stiffness in women over 60. A research team at the Salk Institute demonstrated that time-restricted eating, which aligns almost exactly with the traditional Jewish pattern of evening meals and fasting periods, significantly reduces inflammatory markers and improves cellular repair within 6 weeks. Habit 2. Your last meal should be finished at least 2.5 hours before you sleep, not as a weight management strategy, as a sacred practice of allowing the body to perform its nightly repair work without interruption. This is not deprivation. This is preparation for rest. The third habit is the one that surprises most people I work with. It is the daily use of what the Torah calls the black seed, Nigella sativa. In Hebrew, it is called ketzah. It appears in Isaiah. It appears in the writings of Maimonides, who recommended it in his regimen of health for chronic pain, respiratory conditions, and what he described as the general weakening of the body's vital force. My grandmother kept a small jar of black seed oil on the kitchen windowsill next to the olive oil. She took a small spoonful every morning with warm water and honey. She called it the seed that heals everything, and she said her own mother had told her the same thing. A 2016 meta-analysis published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology reviewed 33 peer-reviewed studies on Nigella sativa and concluded that its active compound thymoquinone is one of the most potent natural inhibitors of inflammatory pathways identified in the scientific literature. Studies conducted at institutions including King Abdulaziz University and the University of Mississippi Medical Center have found measurable reductions in joint pain, morning stiffness, and inflammatory markers in patients with rheumatoid arthritis who supplemented with black seed oil for 8 weeks. This is not folk medicine dressed up in science. This is a compound that has been in continuous human use for over 3,000 years, and that modern pharmacology is now confirming works exactly the way our grandmothers said it worked. Habit 3. 1 teaspoon of black seed oil every morning with warm water. Start with a half teaspoon if you have never used it before and allow your body to adjust. The taste is strong, peppery, slightly bitter. My grandmother told me that if medicine tasted like candy, it was probably not medicine. I have come to agree with her entirely. But there is a second part to this third habit that I have not yet shared, a specific combination that my grandmother always taught alongside the black seed oil, and that significantly amplifies what I just described. I will share that in a coming teaching, because it belongs to Law 5 in its complete form, and I want to do it justice. The fourth habit is the one that every physician, every nutritionist, and every longevity researcher I have ever respected has independently arrived at as their most important finding. And it is the one that is hardest to prescribe because it cannot be bottled or sold. It is what my grandmother called chevra, community, Law 6 of the 7 Jewish laws of longevity. In 2023, the United States Surgeon General issued a formal advisory declaring loneliness and social isolation a public health epidemic, not a social problem. A public health crisis, citing evidence that chronic loneliness increases all-cause mortality by 26%, increases the risk of dementia by 50%, and is associated with higher levels of systemic inflammation, comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes per day. In women over 60, the correlation between social isolation and chronic pain is one of the most robust findings in the entire gerontology literature. The body experiences isolation as a threat. It responds to that threat with inflammatory activation. Day after day, year after year, if the isolation continues, the inflammation continues. My grandmother Rachel never lived alone, not because she had to, but because in her tradition, the idea of a woman living in physical and social isolation was not just sad. It was a violation of the order of creation. The Pirkei Avot teaches, do not separate yourself from the community. This is a legal teaching, a moral teaching, But it is also, as it turns out, a profoundly medical one. Habit 4, deliberate, consistent, in-person contact with people who know you and see you, not as a supplement to a full life, but as a non-negotiable pillar of physical health. This is not about being extroverted. My grandmother was not an extroverted woman. It is about maintaining the biological signal to the body that says, you are held, you are known, you are safe. Because when that signal is absent, the inflammatory system does not rest. I want to be honest with you about something personal. There was a period of 3 years in my 50s when I let these practices slip. My husband was ill. My practice was overwhelmed. I stopped observing the evening preparation. I stopped my black seed oil. I stopped making the Friday dinners that had been my anchor since childhood. And within a year, the pain I had eliminated came back. Not as bad as before, but enough. Enough to remind me that these practices are not things you do until you feel better. They are things you do because the body requires ongoing conditions, not one-time interventions. My grandmother used to say that you cannot water a garden once and call it done. She said the 7 laws work like a garden, all 7 together, tended with consistency, season after season. That is something I forgot in those 3 years and paid for in my joints and in my sleep and in my capacity to think clearly. I have not forgotten it since. We are living in a moment when chronic pain among women over 60 is not declining, despite unprecedented access to medications and medical interventions. It is rising. The inflammatory load that our bodies carry today, from processed food, from disrupted sleep patterns, from the particular kind of isolated digital life that has replaced communal physical life, is higher than at any point in recorded human history. The ancient practices I am teaching you were designed for a world with different stresses, but the underlying biology has not changed. The human body responds to the same inputs it has always responded to. What my grandmother knew was how to give it the inputs it was designed to receive. Proverbios 17:22 says, "A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones." This is not metaphor. This is physiology. Chronic grief, chronic isolation, chronic unrelenting stress activates the same inflammatory pathways that produce joint pain and physical deterioration. The Jewish tradition understood this 3,000 years before the first endocrinology textbook was written. The 7 laws I teach are not 7 separate tips. They are 7 dimensions of the same fundamental truth. The body is a sacred system that requires sacred conditions to thrive. Neglecting any part of the system weakens the whole. What you have learned today is real. The 4 habits I have shared with you, daily fermented food and healthy fat, evening preparation for rest, black seed oil every morning, and the non-negotiable maintenance of community. These are practices you can begin today. They cost almost nothing. They require no prescription, and if you apply them consistently for 40 days, you will have objective evidence in your own body of what I have been witnessing in the women I work with for 4 decades. But I also want you to understand something. These 4 habits are powerful precisely because they are part of a larger system. In our tradition, the body is not yours to neglect. It is a gift given to you in trust. Tselem Elohim, made in the image of the divine. To care for it is not optional. Shmirat Haguf, guarding the body, is an act of devotion, and a practice done in isolation without the architecture of the complete system supporting it is like lighting 1 candle in a room that needs 7. In my next teaching, I will share another of the 7 Jewish laws of longevity, one that most women over 60 have been doing exactly backwards for decades without realizing it. And when I say backwards, I mean that the instinct that feels most natural, the one your body tells you to follow when you are in pain, is very often the instinct that is keeping you in pain. I will explain why, and I will show you the ancient correction. If you are watching this and you have not yet subscribed, please do so now and turn on notifications. I teach here regularly, and these teachings build on each other in a specific sequence. Each law I share connects to the ones I have shared before and the ones I will share next. Missing a teaching is like missing a chapter in the middle of a book. The ending won't make complete sense. And please share this video with a woman you love who is living with pain she has been told to accept, because that acceptance is not wisdom. It is the result of not having access to a system that her grandmothers and great-grandmothers carried and that modern medicine lost along the way. You can give her that system, one teaching at a time. Type in the comments what you are committing to starting tomorrow. Which of these 4 habits are you beginning first? I will be reading. I always read. This community is not just a comment section to me. It is Chevra. It is the 6th law in action. Until next time, L'chaim to life.